We've seen an incredible increase in inventory across the board for Toronto real estate, but have you ever wondered which areas have had the highest amount of listings sitting on the market? Or in other terms, something we've been discussing, months of inventory being the highest for that product category and different areas across the city. I ran the data, and the area that has the most properties for sale on a months of inventory perspective may surprise you. I'm Michael Ouzas. I'm a realtor here in Toronto. If you've ever been curious what's going on the ground level in Toronto real estate, click on that first link in the description down below to discuss what's been happening in the market. And if you ever wanted to tie into my MLS to see what properties have been selling for on the current market, you can click on the listed app down below as well. Blog.to saying Toronto is overrun with homes for sale that no one is buying because prices are still sky high. And one term they love to use is plummeting sales numbers and surge of homes hitting the market. And this is going from the latest stats from the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board. I thought I would take this one step further and actually break down what we saw on the Market Watch for Toronto, but more so in a perspective of which areas have the highest amount of inventory that has not been selling. Here on Market Watch, and we will not go through this data. You can look at another video which discusses how to find this data for yourself to see exactly where these pockets are and how we came to these numbers. But one thing you may have been hearing in the market is that every property type and every micro market is performing very differently right now. We're still seeing multiple offers on some properties in some areas, depending on the price. And we're seeing other properties sit on the market for much longer than they have in the past. When we think about months of inventory, we're looking at, are we in a seller's market, a balanced market, or a buyer's market? Typically 0 to 2 months of inventory puts us in a seller's market, 3 to 5 puts us in a balanced market, and 6 months or above puts us in a buyer's market. For the purposes of this video, we will go through the highest months of inventory across the board for all property types and in different areas of the city of Toronto. In our next video, we will break down which have the tightest amount of inventory to show a contrast between different areas and different pockets in the city, especially when it comes to property type. We're going to start with the detached market in the city of Toronto, which are, of course, the highest priced properties in the city of Toronto. If we take a look at the echelon of property types, it generally goes detached, semi-detached, townhouses, condos. Number 5 on the list, Toronto CO7 with 4.78 months of inventory. So it's trending past that balanced territory. That is north of the 401 between Bathurst and Yonge Street. And if we take a look at what's next, we have Toronto C14, which is actually just east of CO7. It's weird the way the map is, but that's how it's categorized. And that's also north of the 401, east of Yonge to Bayview. They have 5.44 months of inventory. Next on the list, E10 with 6.07 months of inventory, which puts E10 officially into a buyer's market for detached properties in that area. And E10 is in that Morningside to Lawrence area. Next on the list actually did surprise me, and that's CO2, which is the Annex Summerhill area, Yonge and St. Clair, a really beautiful area in the city. They have over 6 months of inventory for Toronto detached homes. That could also be reflective on the price points as well in the area. And surprisingly, number 1 in the area is C12. And if you don't know C12, you could type in Drake's House, because that is the bridle path, which is one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive area in basically Canada, and if not one of the top in all of North America. It's an extremely expensive area in the city of Toronto. Not surprising they have 23 months of inventory. It's actually pretty common that those properties do sit on the market for quite a long period of time, as those buyers are definitely fewer and far between. If we look at the semi-detached area, EO7, 4 months of inventory, still pretty balanced there. And EO7 is north of 401 between Kennedy and Markham Road. Next up, we have W09 with 4 months of inventory, still balanced, and that is north of Eglinton to the 401. If we look at CO8, which is actually in the downtown core. So now we're looking east of Yonge Street from Bloor down to the water, all the way to the DVP. That's a pretty prominent downtown core area. It does have one of the highest clusters of condos, but also they do have semi-detached properties, many of which are that Victorian style, which is a very beautiful style of property. They're also in a balanced territory here at 4 months of inventory. And then CO1, which is on the west side of Yonge Street. So same thing in that downtown core, also 4.18 months of inventory. And leading the way, W04 Weston to the Allen south of the 401, and that's at 5.5 months of inventory. One thing that really stands out in the city of Toronto is that even for semi-detached properties, none of the highest months of inventories have gone into official buyer territory yet. And that is the only category that we're seeing this. And I believe that that's because semi-detached properties are generally that perfect property for step-up buyers. And you've seen me talk about this on the channel before. So once we flip the script and see what is at the other end of this list, I'm very confident that semi-detached properties will be the hottest when it comes to property type in the city of Toronto, just like we've seen for much of this year. Next up for townhouses, Toronto E08 coming in at number 5, 6 months of inventory, and Toronto E08 is in and around that Scarborough Village, Guildwood area. As we take a look at CO4, townhouses in this area are actually quite expensive because it is one of the most prime areas in Toronto. You're talking Lawrence Park North and Bedford Park. It's an extremely desirable area. 6 months of inventory for townhouses. You don't see a ton of them in the area. If we take a look at EO4, that's in and around Scarborough Town Center. Townhouses there at 7 months of inventory. And then C13 at 8 months of inventory. This is the shops at Don Mills. It's actually a pretty awesome mall now. They've really added some amazing new stores and restaurants, even in Italy at the shops at Don Mills. You can get there right now in that area, 8 months of inventory. So definitely into a buyer's market for townhouses. And then taking a look at CO7, and as we discussed, that's kind of that Yonge and Finch TTC station, well into a buyer's market for townhouses in CO7. Heading over to the condo market, and some of the most surprising numbers that we've seen here in a very, very long time when it comes to inventory absorption on the condo market. And newsflash, if you are a buyer looking to get into the market, these areas could present some of the best opportunities we've seen in a very, very long time when it comes to finding a property that you're looking for in the downtown core especially, and in other great areas across the city. Number 5, Toronto CO1. So that's the biggest cluster of condos in the downtown core. We're talking Yonge to basically Dufferin and Bloor down to the water. 7.3 months of inventory. Still not at the top of this list. Even at 7.3 months of inventory, very much in a buyer's market at this moment in time. CO8 next on the list. And keep in mind that's east of Yonge Street. 8.46 months of inventory. This is a number that really jumps out here at over 8 months of inventory for condos in the downtown core. So your location, if you are looking for downtown, is really, really prominent there. Taking a look at EO7, once again, it was back on the semis list. 9.45 months of inventory, and that's that north of the 401. So not as prime of a downtown location, but still in an area where many condos continue to be built outside of the downtown core. And this is one of those areas that has seen an influx of inventory here at 9.45 months of inventory. Next up, the biggest surprise for me across the board, W06 is at over 10 months of inventory right now for condos. So if you think Park Lawn and Lakeshore, it's a very desirable area for people to live. In that Mimico area, there's plenty of condos available for sale, and many of which have been sitting for quite a long time. So basically, 1 out of 10 listings are selling right now in Mimico. 10 months of inventory is a number that I wasn't ever sure we would see, but here it is, just happened after the month of June numbers. Now, I did say W06 was very surprising to me, but also this one at C12, super surprising at 15 months of inventory. Now, these are more expensive properties as we discussed, but I'm more so surprised just that the condos are in that area and for sale versus those big mansions and multi-million dollar properties. So that rounds up our list of months of inventory. That's a pretty data driven video, but I really thought it'd be cool to break down which areas have the most amount of inventory that's been sitting on the market and not really getting absorbed as quickly as other areas. In the next video, we're going to flip the script and see exactly where the hottest pockets are in the city and the hottest property types across the board, because that will really break down how things are going on both sides of the spectrums, both in the hotter areas and hotter property types compared to properties that have been sitting on the market a little bit longer, more in that buyer type of market. I'm Michael Ouzas. Thanks for watching.